we went there and started doing forensic investigations and all. And then we figured out one of the employee who was working there wanted to move out of the company and start his own organization. And the worst part, the company didn't change the password, admin credentials. So what happened? This guy logged in, breached, like taken the entire data, and started slowly erasing the data from the system. By the time people figured out, it was a bit late. And then this guy made a ransom demand to the company. You often stand at the intersection of a business, technology, and risk, making critical calls. So it is CISO who have to make the critical call that can impact the entire organization. If something goes wrong from that perspective, CISOs will be held accountable. I would say decision making is a bit lonely for the CISOs. Unless until there is a crisis, people don't understand what value those solutions or those technology or those decisions are bringing in. But having a peer network to share experience and supportive leadership that values cybersecurity as a business enabler helps navigate this.
Hi, Shishir. Welcome to Be Fearless podcast. It's such a pleasure to have you here.
Thank you, Alexandra. Good to be here, and thank you for having me.
Yeah. So just tell us a little bit about your cybersecurity journey. How did you end up in a position where you are today?
My cybersecurity journey hasn't been so linear, I would say, but it was fueled with a mix of curiosity and adaptability. I was doing my engineering, and that's when I thought probably coding, I don't want to do it for a lifetime. And I got enrolled myself into cybersecurity masters. It was cyber law and information security, and that's how my journey started. Have been into multiple roles, have worked in MNC startups and SMEs, which gives me a little bit of unique perspective on how organizations of different scales approach cybersecurity, probably I would say. What drives me is the opportunity to make a tangible impact, I would say, in general. And that is what is keeping me survive in cybersecurity.
Yeah, you touched upon that you worked in MNC startups. How did you sort of choose the direction towards which to go, like in one company versus the other?
So it just happened. I didn't choose it specifically, I would say. I started my journey in consulting, and then it was becoming tiring in general. Managing risk and compliance globally was tiring. Morning wake up and early wake up and very late night calls. So I switched to another company, and that's how I got into the internal role. It's been quite a roller coaster ride, I would say, for last approximately 15 years or so.
Okay, interesting. And what was the exact roller coaster, would you say? What were the highs and downs of this roller coaster?
There are a lot to talk about. So when I got into cyber, immediately from the college, I got into a consulting role. And then slowly grew up the ladder, and I was managing entire files for the organization locally. So there have been a lot of things that I have seen in terms of breaches, compliance, the company, how it operates. So as an external consultant, the world was different. But now when I'm in an internal role, world is drastically different, and it's a lot of different challenges. It took me a bit of time to adapt to the internal compliance, internal security role, but I think I have been enjoying it so far.
Yeah, I can imagine it's quite different from giving someone suggestion how to follow best practices and then being the implementer of these practices. So how did you use the practices that you learned and advised when you were in consulting into more implementation mode?
Yes, so it is drastically different. So when we used to go as an external consultant, it was pretty easy for us to say, like, these are the things that needs to be done. There used to be some arguments, some discussions, but mostly the organizations used to align, like, these are the things that needs to be done. So that is more from an external world. But when it came to the internal world, it is up to you to decide what needs to be done. Right? From an external consultant, looks very easy to say, like, these are the best practices, you get those things implemented. But when it comes to the internal environment, it's very challenging. Working with different stakeholders, getting the agreement, getting the alignment is quite challenging in general. So it's been different, I would say, but it has its own challenges when it comes to the internal role, right? But those are fascinating, and it's very, you are actually working on a lot of technologies directly and getting those
Yeah.
things.
I can imagine, and especially within Advanced Intelligence Group, there is such a diverse range of products, B2B, B2C. How do you combat all these challenges as a CISO?
As you said, B2B and B2C, right? So both of them have their own different landscape. When I speak about B2B solutions, the B2B business that we have, uh, the approach is more towards safeguarding partnerships, ensuring data integrity, and meeting regulatory requirements in multiple markets, because we operate predominantly in Asia and APAC and various regions in this market, right? So it's different. But when it comes to B2C, regulatory requirements and all those things are already in place. I think those are much a little clear on the B2C front, but the focus is more towards protecting user trust by securing personal information and combating fraud in real time. So it's drastically different. But ultimately, it is like we think from a group perspective, this is what is beneficial for the organization. So we try to implement the best practices the way we can implement for both the organizations.
In which area would you say you see the most amount of challenges that today, as a cybersecurity leader, you just wish you could solve? Like, what keeps you awake at night?
So challenges wise, there are a lot. In my organizations, we are, I would say, a grown up startup. When I say a grown up startup, means like we have been in the market for last eight plus years, and have grown significantly. So we are at a stage where we can call ourselves almost not a startup and a bigger org, I would say. So since we are focused predominantly on the Asian environment, the challenges, I would say, is more on the regulatory landscape, because our regulatory landscape keeps drastically changing time to time. When we see an organization which is more established, they have their own frameworks well established, and they are able to move ahead with the things in the way that they want to operate in. But in this region, I would say it's more like a patchwork of rules. Sometimes data localization requirement comes in, sometimes some other requirement flows in from the regulators, resource localization, data localization, and various other stuffs. So we have to be adaptable in terms of our compliance programs and all. I think those are some of the things which are keeping us awake. But the good part is that we safeguard the information of a lot of customers, right? So we are trying to ensure that users' data is secure. So which keeps us motivated also.
Yeah, I'm really curious, how do you look at the whole regulatory enforcement? Because from one point of view, yes, you have to stick to all these regulations and make sure you follow them. But from another hand, are they really enough to be protected when it comes to cybersecurity?
So when it comes to regulation, those are the basic benchmark they want to set it up. So they want to provide a basic setting, basic requirements that an organization should be meeting, but it should be driven based on the risk of the organization, right? So ultimately, what kind of risk the organization is facing depends on that. Organization chooses what is required for them. But yes, I see regulatory requirements are just a compliance requirements. Those are bare minimum that the organization have to meet. Apart from that, it is up to the organizations what extra that they can do to safeguard their environment, because these regulatory requirements have to cater to the entire global at the global scale or the country scale level, right? Where different kind of setups So they are different kind of organizations. They don't want to be a roadblock, but they want us to have a basic benchmark set up within the organization.
Of course, and I can imagine that you always try to go above and beyond, not just follow the basic regulations. Which brings me to my next question when it comes to AI, right? You're yourself an AI powered company. So, how do you harness AI for cybersecurity and make sure that right now there are a lot of discussions around data leakage? What are your thoughts about it?
So AI has become an indispensable tool for our cybersecurity strategy. Since we are an AI company, a lot of things goes on the AI front in general for the technology and also. But from a cyber perspective, what we are predominantly focusing on automating a lot of detection and response capability, even prediction capabilities too. Right. So, to give an example, AI-powered anomaly detection helps us to spot unusual pattern in real time where it is an unexpected login location or unusual payment activity. The solutions we have been using to enhance those solutions based on the AI models, whatever we could. Right. So that is that we have been working on. To give an example, we have also integrated AI into our fraud preventions and all, because that is where B2C things are predominantly important. Customers from where they log in, our users from where they log in, what happens, and all those. That is where we have been trying to harness the AI capabilities. But in general, I would say the real strength of AI though lies in how it amplifies our human capabilities, right? So it is not here for the replacement of the human capability, but ultimately to empower the human to take the right call much effectively and reduce a little bit of fatigues, I would say.
You sound like you're very pro the AI development and AI technology when it comes to enhancing cybersecurity. But do you have any worries when it comes to risks that AI brings to an organization?
As I said earlier, also AI brings immense opportunities. That is for sure.
Yeah.
But it brings a lot of challenges also.
A lot of employees receive very tailored AI phishing emails. So, how do you go about educating or implementing the right tools that something like this isn't going to help target employees within your organization?
AI-powered phishing is another concern, and with the AI capabilities these days, Gen AIs and all. Earlier, we used to find the mistakes in our these phishing emails and all pretty easily, but these days it is difficult to spot, right? Because probably somebody might be using a chat GPT or some other solution to generate the phishing emails. So it has become more sophisticated and personalized, making them harder to detect, definitely. How do we counter it? We did combine some of the advanced threat prediction tools with continuous awareness training employees. So simulating these kind of attacks within the organization, tailored to a department, tailored to certain set of individuals, helps us to prepare teams to recognize the phishing attempts and respond it effectively. Sometimes give our cyber team also the free way to run and without intimating any of the security team members that we are going to run. In fact, so I have given them some of the privileges that they need not to tell me also when they are arranging it. So we can test our internal capabilities also.
One of the additional thing I would say, and then obviously focus on governance, right? This includes performing regular audits for AI systems to identify vulnerabilities and ensure compliance with security standards. Yeah.
Yeah, and as you're in charge of a lot of this awareness trainings, how do you keep it effective? Because today awareness training became almost like something like a chore for employees trying to escape. How do you make sure this is something that they find important?
So I would say that's a very interesting point. So a lot of people within the organization typically sees that it is just for the compliance tick box, right? So they just go through the training and all, where how much they grasp, how much they deal with it, how much they understand is something that is a little difficult to measure, right? So from my perspective, what I would say is the few things that we want to keep it in our mind. Our first step is towards relevance. When I say relevance is how does which department engages with what kind of roles, right? How the trainings have to be drafted or created for those specific roles, right? So which makes more sense. They can relate it much better within their role, and then how they take it forward from perspective, right? For example, an engineer might need to know about the security coding practices along with some of the best practices from a normal phishing and various other things, right? Whereas in finance, they benefits more from recognizing phishing scams, targeting payment systems. So those are some of the things that we try to focus on. Second, obviously, it requires to become engaging. Gamified training, real world simulations, or probably bite size micro learning sessions can transform it. So that is something what we try doing it to make sure users understand it more from, and they are excited about attending those trainings. And we have seen the difference when we gamified the training, the difference comes in. Another key element is about storytelling. Instead of giving a dry presentations or probably I would say share relatable stories about real world breaches or incidents, that keeps people excited. They want to know more about it. Otherwise, just giving a plain dry presentation is a little difficult for people to digest and keep their attention for the time being.
Of
Uh,
course.
but last but not the least, I would say creating a positive culture around security is the key. If training feels punitive, right? If you are uh, making it punitive in general, then things are not going to work. People see it as resentment. Instead, we celebrate improvement. For example, when we ran our phishing exercise, phishing simulation, click rates dropped significantly. So it's not like cyber team's achievement. We try to highlight it as a collective achievement, how people are serious about it, what security team is doing, what people have done significantly well in terms of reporting and all. So those are some of the things we try to focus on. And I think this is what I would suggest. There are other areas that probably people can also explore, but these are few of the pointers that I wanted to call out, which could be helpful in nature.
No, those are great. Those are great. I feel like these kind of trainings, I'm sure, were like a wake up call for a lot of employees when, you do the training and you see what kind of risk you're exposed to on an everyday basis. So it really shows you the vulnerabilities that you might be exposed to. So what I'm just curious, what kind of stories do you typically share to increase this interest into awareness trainings? Do you have any favorites?
So the one of my favorite is from my personal experience. I would say uh, it's been quite some time. I think I use it quite a lot in general. Once there was an organization that got breached, and when we started talking to them, what exactly happened when we started doing the forensic investigation, they said just a couple of months before you were certified, and you were like the company was certified on these standards, but ultimately it got breached. What went wrong? Was there a fault from the auditor and all? So the answer was like it is easy to blame the auditor, right? They have done the assessment, but auditors have their own limitation. They can do a little bit of sampling only. They cannot do 100%. So that is when we end up there. We went there and started doing forensic investigations and all, and then we figured out one of the employee who was working there wanted to move out of the company and start his own organization. He was given a contractor role. He started doing the contractor work as and the admin credentials he was managing for the servers and all. And then
Wow.
eventually they decided in future after a few months they want to have that role moved internal rather than contractors. And the worst part, the company didn't change the password, admin credentials.
Oh,
So
wow.
what happened, this guy logged in, breached, like taken the entire data and started slowly erasing the data from the system. By the time people figured out, it was a bit late. And then this guy made a ransom demand to the company. Though the company was able to figure out, solve the case, but this is one of my personal experience, I would say.
Oh, wow.
Quite easy to judge, but ultimately there are a lot of things that can go wrong when you are securing an organization. A small mistake of not changing the credential. I won't say it's a small, but this is one of the mistakes, right? But it is a much bigger mistake in general where the root credentials or the admin credentials are not changed when we leaves the organization. So I think there was some flaw within the organization process or something around that. Yeah.
Must be, because this looks like very easily orchestrated attack. He practically didn't have to do anything. He just logged in like every day, just took out the data. No one could do anything about it. That is,
He has access to the logs also, right? So he can delete the logs, and then you won't be able to figure out what exactly happened. But luckily, they were able to catch it. That is one of the my, I think, most favorite personal experience, I would say.
yeah, no, I can say so. This is like a very, very great example of insider threat. So, how do you construct your practices today to prevent this kind of attacks happening in the future?
So a lot of things comes down to the governance process. So one of the lacking feature was governance, I would say, because when an employee leaves or when the contractor leaves, right, in this specific scenario, if I have to speak, the access should get revoked. But they forgot for some reason, right? Maybe shortage of the staff or whatever. But there is a lack of governance. So ultimately, governance is the key. That is where you can keep certain checks and balances at certain places, which makes sure nothing goes wrong. But yes, technology tools are something which is helpful. So for us, one thing that I would say is segregation of duties are also important. When the logs are getting generated, are you making sure this logs goes to a system where the administrators are not able to modify the logs and all? So that is where you see SIM, file integrity monitoring, and various solution comes into play, and they helps the organization safeguard a lot of things on that aspect. But it comes down to the basic best practices what the organization has to follow. Keep it doing. It is repetitive. People talk about defense in depth, various other new solutions, zero trust, and various other solutions. What are the terminologies which are coming into the market? But if you are not making your basics right, I think it's always going to be a problem. So make sure your basics are first put in place. Then you keep on enhancing, advancing whatever is required.
Yeah, I think also a lot of these kind of attacks are very intelligently orchestrated. And when it comes to even detecting who was the attacker, who was the threat, it takes some time to figure out who was this person. So with today technologies, I feel like there is a certain gap when it comes to really finding the source of the attack. So, for example, a lot of activities happening on the browser. How do you go about identifying what was the threat? Because there is such a lack of visibility when it comes to existing solutions. How do you leverage AI in your case to spot this kind of trends?
So that is where a lot of thing comes down to the predictability, right? So how much you are able to predict. It's not only about identification of the root cause, right, or identification of the incident. Are you able to recover from it? So are you focusing over resiliency in general for the organizations to sustain those issues? From a browser perspective, I think bit challenging. I wish solutions could do the complete isolations and all. Tab, upper email, whatever we access, it gets virtually isolated into a different environment and doesn't any malware or any of those things doesn't get deployed directly over the solutions. For that, you have other controls like TDR, DNP, and various other things. But there are risk of compromise in terms of your credentials and all. So I think that is where things are to be taken into account. So we do have some of the controls around that, and it's a journey, right? We are still enhancing those. Still a long way to go, but yeah, let's see how exactly it flows in.
Yeah, and from your perspective as a CISO, what are your thoughts around BioID policies and remote work? Because a lot of these kind of incidents happen when someone is working remotely. What are your thoughts?
I won't say no to BYOD in general. It's and I think from an organization perspective, it doesn't make sense to say no, because every organization is trying to allow people to work from home and all. But you have to have your own basic set of controls to make sure if you are towards zero trust journey and if you have implemented zero trust solutions, so basic controls are there before user can access certain systems, critical systems, what kind of access that can be obtained if you are not within the network and all. So those things are to be taken into account from typically from a security perspective. But if I have to say yes or no between BYOD, I would say it's a conscious yes.
Yes. Okay. Okay. Yeah, because for a lot of organizations, contractors is such an effective way to employ people, but at the same time, for a lot of organizations, this is actually the risk. Like as the example you were bringing up previously, it was the person that was the contractor that let this whole breach incident happen in the first place. So yeah, this is very crucial in today's world, just to be able to manage something that is unmanaged. Yeah, and yeah, so if you could implement one game-changing improvement in browser security today, what could it be?
I think I briefly touch based that one. That is what I was talking about, virtual environment for the browser. I would say if we can build something on universal browser sandboxing with minimal performance impact, that will be. I think I will be looking for it for that kind of thing in the near future as a transformative improvement, where we can imagine every session running in an isolated container, preventing malware trackers or malicious code from escaping to the endpoint or network. Even if something for some reason gets escaped, so those will be the minimal thing, and for which we can have other controls like mobile device management, endpoint detection response, DLP, and all. So I think that is where I see some of the transformative changes or improvement may happen, which will specifically talk about universal browsing.
Yeah, that would be ideal scenario, zero latency, and then everything is unboxed. Yeah, and so you're largely focused, and your work and your company are largely focused in ASEAN. So given the demographic of what your website states as underbanked and underserved, how does your approach to security differ from your past experience?
Uh, so I would say the difference is when let me try to put it up in two categories, probably MNCs and startups. So MNCs operate at a global scale, which means they really rely on standardized frameworks and implementation of those things within the organization. Startups are a different story. They are fast, lean, and typically more cloud native. Right. So that is where things are where we are working on that environment. Uh, so this is really an insightful question, I would say. From our perspective, we are very different from traditional financial institutions. Reason being because we are not focusing on the legacy systems and addressing a well-established user base. Where we are focusing more, in contrast, I would say, unique challenges. We are engaging with users who may have limited experience with digital services, um, operating across diverse regulatory environments and scaling rapidly in emerging markets. Those are the things that we focus on. So the first thing that I would talk about is user-centric security. That is the cornerstone of our approach. For users with varying levels of digital literacy, security measures uh, must be intuitive for us. For example, we tailor multi-factor authentications for mobile-first users and design fraud prevention systems that that predominantly addresses localized threats. Second component is scalability. That is our another priority. We are users across multiple geographies. We leverage cloud native solutions, zero trust architecture. These allows us to provide consistent protection while ensuring accessibility and performance remain seamless. I think we're talking about regulatory diversity too. In ASEAN and APAC region, I think regulatory framework wise, it's quite diverse. Let's talk about a simple example about Singapore and Indonesia. Singapore is not enforcing data localization that heavily, whereas when it comes to Indonesia, data localization for the fintech and financial institutions is a must, right? So for us, our compliance programs need to be adaptable. The data protection strategies have to be localized for some of the countries. And then obviously we need to work very closely. We have to collaborate very closely with the regional regulators to stay ahead of the environment. So I think these are some of the things that typically is important for us.
And just for our listeners, in how many countries do you have presence?
I think six plus countries we are present. Predominantly, we are in APAC, Singapore, Philippines, Malaysia, Indonesia, Thailand. Then we also operate in China. So diverse requirements, diverse challenges. Yeah.
Yeah, I can imagine having to tailor your approach to each jurisdiction, each country. It takes some time and some agility as a startup. Although you said you're not quite a startup, but to some extent it provides a certain advantage to be that agile and be that adaptable.
Yes.
Yeah. So you're also the company's interim group data privacy officer. So tell us the story behind that and how does that link to your InfoSec role?
Okay. So before I answer how did I become the interim DPO, so the incumbent DPO when he was leaving, so when he was within the system also, cyber security and or information security works very closely with the data privacy officers in general. They are the one who builds the guidelines, frameworks, and all whatever is required. Security is there to implement and put safeguards around that. So that is what we focus on. I have been working very closely with the DPOs earlier, but when he left, ultimately we started looking out. I signed up for a couple of months because we were about to finalize a candidate. So the company decided, or the leadership decided, that I should be handling for the time being, and I was happy to take it because we were working very closely.
Yeah.
But eventually, we couldn't close that position, so I have to stick with the role for longer term. So it's been, I think, 7 8 months. I have been handling this position till we find the replacement. So that is, in nutshell, the journey is. So we have been working very closely with legal, data privacy office, and products, and in terms of implementing the data privacy principles, privacy by design concepts, and all. So DPO and cyber were very closely collaborating on every aspect. So that is one of the reason I'm taking care of the DPO role for now. But hopefully we are able to close the position, and I will be able to get away from this role.
I really hope you find some time for sleep. You know, they say people in cybersecurity don't sleep. Yeah, I also saw that you recently won the CISO 30 award. Congratulations on that. So maybe tell us a little bit more about the award and what does it include? What is it about?
First of all, thank you so much. So CISO 30 award is predominantly on ASEAN and Hong Kong region. So what it states is a few of the top, I would say, like 30 word itself explains chief security officers, one of the top 30 within that region. So that is where the organization wants to give the recognition. So the organization which arranges CISO 30 award.
Yeah.
So it's a recognition of leaders who are not only driving robust cybersecurity strategies, technology advancement within the organization, but it is also about contributing to their organizations on a broader success. I would say winning was a truly an honor and a testament to the incredible teamwork and innovation at Advanced Intelligence Group, what we do. So one of the key factors, so one of the key projects that we initiated, which stood out for the award was we were driving comprehensive cyber resilience enhancement program, which shifted our focus from just mitigating risk to enhancing overall resilience. When I say overall resilience, which is predominantly making sure that our cybersecurity is embedded in our processes in a way that even if something goes wrong, we are able to recover it well without significant impact. So we have that cyber resiliency in place. Another key aspect of that was embedding cybersecurity in our company culture, working with teams across different domains like engineering, product, business, legal, integrate security seamlessly into the workflows. So that is what I would say.
And when it came to, I'm sure some of your CISO friends also won this reward. Um, do any of the stories from their side stood out? That because I imagine the whole circle in ASEAN when it comes to cybersecurity leaders is quite put together. Do you like kind of adopt each other best practices when it comes to cybersecurity and moving forward?
I think so. It's the advantage of the cybersecurity community in this region specifically. It's very closely knitted. Uh, there are a lot of sharing that happens in terms of collective expertise. We try to share it across amongst each other, and that is where it helps us ensure that we know what is happening in the industry. We share each other's experience with each all of us and make sure that we are able to enhance and uh, meet the drastic changes whatever is happening around the world. It's like the adversaries are working together quite a lot in terms of their activities. Similarly, cyber community also is very helpful for each other. So that is what we have been driving around, and I'm very thankful to the fellow CISOs and fellow security professionals across the region who have been very collaborative on that front.
Yeah, as hackers collaborate together, CISOs also like to collaborate together. And so you've been working in an industry that's constantly changing and constantly under pressure. How do you stay motivated and ensure your teams remain resilient during these challenging times?
It's tough question, I would say. Uh, motivation. This motivation is very simple for us, and this is when I talk to my team. Also, this is what I say: we are not only safeguarding company information, right? We are safeguarding the user information. When I say user information, our customers who are trusting us to share their data, their information. So that is where I think we want to focus on, and that gives us the comfort that we are here for much bigger cause. It's one of the purpose for our mission. I would say creating safer digital environment to keep my team resilient. I think the focus is predominantly on communication and recognition. During challenging times, clear communication about goals, progress, and setbacks helps us or ensures that we are all aligned, what we are working for, what we are trying to achieve out of the setups and all, and we are working for a much bigger cause. Recognition whether for big wins or incremental progress, both of them we celebrate, which helps boost the morale and fosters a sense of belonging for the individuals within the organization.
Of course. And I think one of the most interesting trends that I spotted when talking to cybersecurity leaders is that a lot of us emphasize technology, but something that a lot of people missing out on is the culture of having this attitude of always willing to improve, because as hackers are improving their practices. That's the kind of culture that you also want to bring to your organization, to constantly improve no matter what. And this is not something that you can achieve just by purely focusing on tech, but just having this culture of constant adaptation, constant change and improvement. So, what is one challenge that you face that no one knows about?
I think I will be facing the similar challenges what every other security professionals are facing predominantly. But I think one challenge from a CISO perspective or CISO face value perspective, uh, what they face, but a very little it is being spoken about, right, is the loneliness of decision making. When I say loneliness of decision making, you often stand at the intersection of a business, technology, and risk, making critical calls. So it is CISO who have to make the critical call that can impact the entire organization. If something goes wrong from that perspective, CISOs will be held accountable, right? And a lot of time it is up to them to take a call, what is good for the organization. So that is that juncture where I would say decision making is a bit lonely for the CISOs, and these decisions sometimes are misunderstood or undervalued under a crisis occurs. Until a crisis occurs, I would say, right? So until there is a crisis, people don't understand what value those solutions or those technology or those decisions are bringing in, right? So that is one. But having a clear network to share experience and supportive leadership that values cybersecurity as a business enabler helps navigate this. So that is what I would say. Loneliness of decision making is one of the bigger challenge that every CISO might be facing.
Yeah, I can imagine. And I think I can relate to the story of that use case that you like to share within your company, because just by having these use cases, you can really show the importance of having a certain solution in place. Because most people think, hey, I wasn't breached. Why should I have this in the first place? So this is something that I can imagine you have to constantly push for, to have the right practices in place and focus on being beyond the attacker. Yeah.
Yep. So I won't say like it is a story of almost every CISO. It's not like I'm specifically facing this, but this is what I feel that is being less spoken about. So I think we should talk more about that also in general.
Yeah, definitely. And our previous episodes have covered lots of advice for aspiring professionals. So instead, what advice would you give to aspiring cybersecurity leaders?
For cybersecurity leaders, I'm not sure if I'm entitled to suggest or give advice, but there's what I would say is more from collective expertise in this field. We learn from each other. But based on my limited understanding and experience, I think I found that focusing on alignment, adaptability, awareness, and the most important part is assuming a breach mindset has been impactful in strengthening security posture. So,
Yeah.
for the security professionals, I think the first area is as a security professional, this is one of the mistakes that what we do also. We believe in jargons because that is what in security world we use a lot,
Yeah.
right? We talk about zero trust, we will talk about EDR, MDR, MDM, DLP, and various other normal terms, right? Which is pretty easy for a security professional to understand, but the business leaders are not that aligned with those terminologies, right? So when we talk about anything from a security perspective, talk in a way which is more layman, which aligns the business goals. So security can't operate in silo, right? So it is always there where it is aligned with business goals and what is the business goal that we are trying to achieve. security is able to support that. So we are not here to put a roadblock. We are an enabler, making sure that we drive security in a way that the business grows. The typical example that in fact, I was giving it a week before to someone else also. It's like we are driving a Ferrari, uh, but brakes are there. Security see it as a brake. If we push it too hard, the F1, the Formula One or the Ferrari car comes to a halt, right? If we don't put a brake, then it goes and crashes. So the right amount of pressure on the brake helps you navigate, move faster at the turning and various junctures. So that is what I would say. Second is embrace adaptability. The threat landscape is constantly evolving, so your strategies need to be agile. Invest in frameworks like zero trust, leverage AI for faster adoption of uh, various like detection and response capability, sensor or MDR capabilities, and whatnot, and always prioritize continuous improvement over static policies. Thirdly, awareness is the key. The human element remains both the weakest link. People always talk about human element is the weakest link, but the one thing that I would like to call it out here is human element always remains both weakest and greatest asset for the organization. So a strong security posture is not just by putting technology in place. It's also about cultivating a culture where every employee sees themselves as a stakeholder in security. Finally, assume breach mindset, which shifts focus from just prevention to resilience and recovery. So we have been talking quite a lot from many years, right? We have to prevent the breaches. We have to prevent. We are working on prevention, but we need to also see that we are going to get breached at some point in time, right? So how resilient our business is and how quickly we are able to recover. So it's all about preparing for breaches, minimizing the impact, and ensuring rapid response. I think these are the few things that I would like to call it out. By taking these holistic approach, probably I think things will work out, and where we will be able to strengthen our defenses in much better ways.
I think it's a great advice. It's advice how not to make this Ferrari car crash and at the same time completely stuff it. Thank you so much, Shishir. And something that we like to do at the end of every podcast. So we have our previous guests asking questions for the next guest. So our previous guest, Tobias, asked, what is the number one thing you should be focusing on in 2025?
I think our focus is predominantly over resilience, as I spoke about it, resilience earlier also. As an organization, we want to focus more on the resilience for our 2025. We have been working on for quite some time. So CCRE program was one of the programs that we have been running, which is more on the resilience enhancement. Going forward, I think we want to put more effort there. It's a journey, right? We cannot achieve 100% resilience immediately, and it's difficult to achieve too. So we are going through that journey, and I think we want to focus more on the resiliency aspect, which includes adoption of zero trust and various other technologies within the zero trust frameworks, principles, and other technologies within the organizations and all. So I think that is what we are going to focus for 2025.
Yeah, looks like resilience will be the keyword of 2025. Yeah.
I think so.
Yeah. So, what question do you want to ask our next guest?
I think one typical question, a lot of time AI is being spoken, right? In this discussion also, AI term came multiple times.
Yeah.
So for the next guest, probably with the increasing use of AI and automation in cybersecurity, what we are seeing, uh, the next guest probably will should answer, how do you see these technologies evolving the next few years, and what impact do you think they will have on traditional security practices within the organization?
I think it's a great question. Well, thank you so much for your time, Shishir. It's been such a pleasure to have you on our Fearless podcast, and I hope to see you soon.
Thank you, Alexandra. Thank you for having me. It was really nice talking to you. Have a good day.
Yeah.